Welcome to
Between Two Wrestlers,
a podcast that tenuously links together wrestling matches and we discuss them and put our own perspective on it. I'm Andrew Bowers, the owner and promoter of North Wrestling, and I'm currently sandwiched between two wrestlers, Rory Coyle and Liam Slater.
CM Punk is not a good wrestler.
There we go.
He's extremely cool. There's your clickbait headline to start with. But he is extremely cool, and I think that's one of the reasons why he gets so over.
I think the cool stuff is up for debate. I think I've got most
Boris
of
is this thing, right? Boris finds nobody in wrestling cool, including me and you, Liam. And I don't know, maybe he finds us cool. Well, he regularly goes, the wrestling cool. It's not real cool though, is it?
Oh, I would agree.
That's
I would
true.
completely agree.
Right, let's go. Stone Cold Steve Austin, cool or not?
No. He's a fucking redneck.
Yeah, in wrestling, yes. I think CM Punk comes close to what people would assume is cool outside of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
And then I think Stone Cold is probably the same, of like the rednecks go, oh, wow, he has an ATV and guns.
Okay, so Steve Austin's not cool.
In wrestling, though, right? So only choose wrestling cool wrestlers for this bit because, yes, of course, in wrestling, Stone Cold Steve Austin is cool as fuck. That's fine.
Yes. The Rock.
No, I don't think he is cool.
So I think The Rock has done a great job on being a big bodybuilder guy that then gives him a different edge to it. I will say, though, that he's very charismatic and my mum likes The Rock.
Yeah. I don't think he's cool, though. He's quite mainstream. I think if we go back to like corporate rock in like 1990, whatever the fuck it was, the corporate, when he was wearing his like Gucci or Versace like stuff, that's still not cool. Like the slacks and like no socks, like loafers and the open Gucci, like Versace shirt and silk shirt and stuff like that. It's like, it's still like a, what do you call it? It's like, it's a pastiche of being cool. It's not actually cool.
So there's another thing I learned. I don't know if you've learned this, Liam, from working with Andrew Bowers for over 7 years now. He hates a loafer with no sock.
Oh man, no socks. It's
so anyone listening to this, if you want to turn up the north and impress people, fucking get them socks on.
I reckon if you're in a pub and you've got like loafers and no socks on, you've also got some date rape pills in your pocket.
Wow. You're going to cut that. That's terrible. Right. Undertaker.
Yeah, no way is he cool. And he's showing his ass on the whole public scene right now where he's wearing his Blue Lives Matter t-shirt and fucking spouting a load of shite.
Daddy ass.
Well, okay, he's cool. No.
Yeah.
I think, Daddy
really
ass.
Really person, I would say.
Yeah.
Hangs out with Mike O'Hearn, the bodybuilder guy. He's just a cool, general, like laid back person.
Yeah.
The Godfather.
No.
I don't think he was like a legitimate pimp. Like that's pretty.
Is he actually?
Like, yeah, that's where the character comes from.
And he was a heavy as well. He's like a real big, sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes.
Kevin
Nash is cool.
Yeah, he is cool. He is cool.
Also, what I refer to Kempler as a lot.
Big, sexy daddy Kempler.
So if we ever do a North Camp Show parody, please let Kemper be a big, stupid, sexy heel.
I mean, that's what he's doing in North.
No, but then he's like a stupid, sexy goth heel where like he's like, "Ooh, I'm brooding." Get him to be like, he does this bit and it's fucking great, but nobody will ever see it. But I saw it and it's one of my favorite things.
I'm definitely for that.
Every time I see him, I say, "Big sexy," and he goes, "Hello, nice to see you."
He's the most polite, lovely man as well. Okay,
I'm done with my cool wrestlers thing. We'll bring that back next time.
Raven,
cool, weird, cool goth. I don't know. Nah, is he cool or is he like kooky homeless man on the street of San Francisco?
Younger Raven's cool, ECW Raven's cool, and I think CM Punk when he was younger is cooler. CM Punk now, I think, has lost that edge a little bit and is becoming an older Punk man. Speaking of CM Punk,
an older Punk.
what are we looking at today?
The match we are looking at today is Samoa Joe versus CM Punk, and for some reason we've chosen, I think it's because it's the shorter one, we've chosen the worst of the famed trilogy. We've chosen CM Punk versus Samoa Joe 3, which follows on from our last, what was last week's again? How did we get here?
How did we get here? Oh, we watched the triple threat. Sorry, we watched the triple threat of CM Punk, Eddie Guerrero, and Rey Mysterio.
Yeah. That was a fun match to watch. And I think so here we are. We're watching, it's ROH All-Star Extravaganza 2 at the Rexplex in New Jersey.
Because the first two are our draws.
There's not a fucking chance that I am watching. And 2 back-to-back 1 hour time limit draws. I'm not saying that from I'm like, oh, I ain't got enough time in my days. I don't have the attention span for that at all.
No, this pleb did. I watched them both back to back. And then I also watched the straight shooting series that Punk and Joe did because I love the business. I love this podcast.
But did you watch the 3-hour-long saga video that has the shit bits in between?
I skipped through
Did you remix your own postmodern style?
Yeah, basically, I watched the match and then I watched the interview because they actually break down the interview, or they break down the shoot video. And there's also some great clips out of that shoot video, like CM Punk's prank call to Gabe where he's pretending to be Homicide and he's doing the Larry, that spot. It makes me laugh. I remember watching that when I was younger.
I think I could watch hours and hours of those in a row.
Yeah.
I couldn't watch 2 hours of wrestling in a row of the same two people going to a draw.
But I did. How do we want to go about this? Do you want me to talk about these 2 matches to give us the build into this final one?
Yeah, I think so. So as we kind of work out what we're doing on this podcast as we go, we're kind of going to shift the format ever so slightly. I think last couple of times...
No!
Last couple of times we've walked kind of through the matches, I think, kind of one by one, or kind of almost segment by segment, bit by bit, spot by spot. I think we're going to try and move away from that a little bit because I think it kind of restricts how we want to talk about it, and we're going to talk about it.
My memory is atrocious.
Yeah, and it means I actually have to really pay attention to them, and we've established I just like to talk shit about stuff rather than actually talk.
He likes to just read through the PWA.
Yeah, I love doing that. And seeing your reaction to Lex Luger being number 5 in 1997. So I think...
So basically, Samoa Joe is on a world title run unlike anything that ROH has ever seen. I think this is his 20th defense at this point, and Punk is... Basically, they were talking about it where they were sat and they were like, we need to do something for this match because there's no reason why I should be there. This is what Punk's saying. And Joe is quickly running out of people. So they come up with this idea, apparently while Joe was drunk, to do a time limit draw. This was actually going to be expanded out over a longer period of time, and I'll talk about this on the second one as to why it happens quicker. So the first one happens at the ROH World Title Classic event, which is in Dayton, Ohio, which is a new town for them. Nobody's expecting that to go 30 minutes. It's actually not the main event in this as well. An Ultimate Endurance match is the main event. So you get a 60-minute time limit draw followed by a near 40-minute tag team gauntlet match thing. So that's fun. The first match, nobody's expecting this to go to an hour. They're expecting it to be like a Joe match. Joe matches have been pretty quick all the way through. They tend to be about 15 to 20 minutes, which is still long, but quick in regards to the style that he's working. So this match goes real long. At the beginning of the match as well, which I thought was an interesting point, they hand Joe a new Ring of Honor belt, and then it's never seen again. They give him this new belt. Yeah, there's just this new belt that's presented to him by Les Thatcher, and then it never appears again. But anyway, the crowd are super into the match. They love it. They're totally up for everything. The back end is wonderful. There's no particular set format to it, but it's just going back and forth. CM Punk is absolutely annihilating Joe with headlocks. They're expanding out through into it. they also talk about on the interview that they didn't want to blow any of the big spots, so he hits the Pepsi plunge, which is like the biggest thing that he hits CM Punk, but then like rolls to the outside. So the only big maneuver that he hits in this 60-minute match is something that he doesn't get a pin off of. Punk's done our draws before this point. Joe's never done one, so Punk's taken a lot of the lead. And then basically the goals for the match was to set up for future challenges and to set up for Punk coming back again, to have a hour-long draw that adds some prestige to the belt, and then to get Homicide over as a heel. So at the end of the match, it goes to a time limit draw. The crowd are chanting for 5 more minutes, and then Homicide comes out, kills a chant, kills them both, and he gets like the biggest like heel reaction that he's had in ROH at that point. So the setup for the match is to build to future stuff and to get Homicide over. I think that we should have watched this one because this one is the most entertaining out of the three. Dave Meltzer gives it 4.25
You
stars.
described that. Andrew Bowers' face is gone. That does sound quite interesting.
It does.
Yeah. It was wonderful. The crowd just make it. And like, there's this part where I'm looking at it and I'm going, this is unlike any crowds that we've got at the moment, because like they're so in tune with everything. They're on their feet like pretty much throughout it. It's bizarre. But yeah, it was fantastic. It's actually a better match to watch.
I thought that about the one that we eventually watched. I think one of the interesting points is the audience, and I think the way that they are so invested in the match that we watch, like you said, is something that we just don't see anymore. I wonder whether that is, and I guess that's something that we can go into a little bit more, is kind of like the faith that they had in Ring of Honor and the booking of Ring of Honor at that point. I think there's a comment that's made in Joe vs. Punk 3 right at the start. I think it's Dave Prazak. I don't know who else is who the other commentator is.
Is it Dave? I don't know. There's Jim Bauer and Mark Nolte. I believe Jim Bauer is the guy that you think is Dave Prazak.
Oh, right. Jimmy Bauer, by the way, that's Gabe Sapolsky. Wow.
Oh, is it?
There you go. I didn't realize that Jimmy. My dad was called Jim Bowers. There you go. That's fucking weird.
Your dad working for ROH?
Maybe he was all along. Maybe I'm a second generation wrestling promoter. I didn't know it.
Is it the comment about the audience? Is it the fact that they refer to them as a respectful Japanese style audience?
Do that, and then they also make a comment of the fact that it's nearly midnight.
What?
Yeah, it's nearly midnight,
man. Fuck doing this at nearly midnight. Can
you imagine? But then if you look at it, it's like, this is match 10 on a card that had a time limit 20-minute draw, 16-minute match, 17-minute match, a 25-minute match of Danielson versus Homicide just before this. So I was quite surprised that they were still so fucking hype by this. But I guess this is the idea of like a trilogy on the indies. I think is like, you don't see that type of stuff anymore now. So I don't know what it was like in the first one, but it was quite interesting to see like, oh, actually they were like, yeah, we've seen these guys. Like, and this was within a year. This was in 6 months, I think they did there.
Yeah,
this trilogy.
This is a really tight turnaround. To talk a little bit about the second one, the second one that happens is ROH Joe versus Punk 2. This is meant to be a 0-1 show with Steve Corino headlining. Right. But like Steve ends up not being there. So then Gabe's like, I need this match because I need a draw. Where are they? They're in Chicago as well. There's no draw for the show. So he's like, I need this match. They didn't want it. They actually wanted this second one, I believe, to be where the third one is at All-Star Extravaganza. Right. But then they're like, well, I guess we're going. They're both fucked going into this. They're both hurt. Joe's got an infected leg where he can't get his kick pad off. Punk, as always, is injured and he's got a fucked back. So they talk about calling this match like laid on the floor and piecing bits together. And just being like, we'll do this and we'll do this, and just absolute wrecks. And they said that like about 80% of it was called in the ring. I think the match, while it gets 5 stars, isn't as good as the first one. And there's one point as well, as you get towards the back end, I say back end, as you get towards like the last 20 minutes of it, both the commentators, Bauer and Mark Nolte, leave the comms. So on the video that I watched, it's just the final 20 minutes of audience, which is quite nice actually, because Mark Nolte is the fucking worst. God, he's so annoying. He's awful.
Liam, why did they leave comms? Is there a storied reason, or is it just?
So they just go for it. So Bauer or Gabe just goes, and we're leaving the commentary to go and watch this match.
Oh, okay.
So they just leave the comms to then watch the match. So the match plays out as is. So that's the sort of like story going into it. The crowd, that obviously because they're from Chicago, it ends up being way more of a Punk crowd, and like it's one of the first times that Joe's getting like a bit more of a heelish reaction in Ring of Honor.
Right.
In terms to give you a little bit overview of like how I looked at it, personally, I didn't think this one was as good. I'm a fucker for being like, oh, this isn't as good as the thing that I watched first, or like when people are like, oh, this is a great match. It has to be a really good match for me to be like, yeah, it was, or else I'm like, no, it wasn't. The fact that like Meltzer's give this one the 5-star, I'm like, the first one, I think objectively the first one is better.
Right.
I don't think the story continues as they wanted it to from the first match to the second match. I do think that it would have benefited from having more time. To let that sit, to then talk through it a couple of times, to then go, cool, now let's piece this one together. It happens in a really quick turnaround. If I just quickly look at the dates, it goes from June and then they're back again in October, which for an independent is not a long amount of time. So there's about 10 shows through there, but they're all based in like different areas and stuff like that. So by the time you get DVD production out and stuff like that, you've probably got 1 or 2 months before you're off and going again. But yeah, that's the second one. I don't think it lands as well. I don't think the finish on it is right for the story and the match, but it might be right for the story overall. But yeah, I think the second one isn't as strong as the first one is. Which then brings us to the third one. Dave Meltzer rates this as 4.25 stars, I believe.
Yeah.
Imagine quarter in a star. Fuck my life.
What the fuck are you? I always think as well that's like the sweet spot for matches as well, because I always find, I don't know if you've ever read, and this is revealing my hipster kind of leanings, a Pitchfork website, which is like
I know Pitchfork.
Music website, and they always like
the one that you guys are talking about.
The way they give it like a rating of like 10, but it'll be like 10.6, like 9.6 or 8.3. And I always find the sweet spot for those albums are around about between 6, like higher than 6 and lower than 8. And anything over an 8 is just fucking wanky. It's just like, and I feel that's a little bit the same with Meltzer's 5-star reviews. Is like the 5 and 6-star ones I watch, and I'm like, I don't know whether it's because they're already labeled as 5 and 6-star matches that I'm like, well, you're just never going to be able to live up to that hype, or whether actually the ones that are around about 4.5, I'm like, yeah, that's my jam. That's kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah, I would agree that I do find that sometimes when they're put on a bit of a pedestal, I then struggle to get into them, and maybe that's my own bias out of it. But I would say that the first one, out of all the matches, the first one is the better one. I think mainly because there's not an expectation coming into them.
Yeah.
Whereas these have like a bit more expectation into it. Now, for the crowd and for the ROH crowd, that actually pays off massively, where they actively want that. From a jaded wrestler such as myself, that can be a bit of a detriment to it.
Yeah.
And then from
you're
there,
not as jaded now, though. Now you're mates with me. I think you're having more fun. You're not as jaded.
Yeah.
No, you haven't got that belt weighing heavy.
Now you haven't got that
just fuck
anger.
them out in an opening match. Happy days.
Yeah. Great fun.
So someone you mentioned there, Bars, there's 10 shows between them. So, and like Liam, you mentioned something there that's interesting, because obviously they're doing these 10 shows, but I'm assuming they're hitting like pretty different cities across these 10 shows. So do you think that's a little bit of a detriment of like, it's not like this is always being paid off in the same kind of territory or demographic? But then that ROH fan base, they kind of were the type that would probably
follow them around,
keep up.
Yeah. Now, they are all in like the northeast area, and I do think that people are following them around. So to get from World Title Classic to Punk and Joe 2, they go to Pennsylvania, then they're in New Jersey twice, Then they're in Wisconsin. They are then in Chicago before they get there. The Pennsylvania again, Massachusetts, New Jersey, 2 nights in Pennsylvania. They're in Dayton again before they go to Joe and Punk 2, which is in Chicago. So even there, like, they had shows where like there was the overlap where it's like, oh, this crowd would have known what was going on. And then it's not at that point. It's this real weird mix of they're working for DVD distribution, but then there's also a live audience. And then I'm not entirely sure on what the DVD distribution turnaround is like at this point, but like it's not as instantaneous as our on-demand services right now.
That's the backdrop of this, is that the turnaround wasn't as accessible to get these matches. Like, it used to have to wait quite a while to get a hold of them. So I probably didn't see this until, I don't think I would have seen this stuff until I was seeing Samoa Joe on TNA in like 2007. Mm-hmm. And then I would go, oh shit, all right, I'll go back to it. And then I would have to order the DVD, or a friend of mine would have the DVD. Then I would get the DVD. And then you'd be like, I'd probably watch them in the wrong order and go, what the fuck is, like, I wasn't that way inclined where I was like right on top of it and kind of like follow it in that way. But I think there's something beautiful about that. Like, it makes these matches, because they don't happen everywhere. So from a promoter's point of view, what was really interesting was the trilogy side of stuff and being able to book that, because I don't think they wrestled really anywhere else outside of Ring of Honor. It was like nobody else, apart from, weirdly, FWA in England did Joe versus Punk around about the same time of it. It's obviously like, and that's why they did it, was because this trilogy was happening or had happened or whatever. But what was really cool is that you don't see them doing it in like IWA Mid-South, or you don't see them doing it any other, whereas they would have been able to have booked these guys, no problem at all. Like, they were working wrestlers on the independent scene, but they managed to keep this to just Ring of Honor. Whereas nowadays, it's almost like wrestlers want those feuds to kind of cross promotions. So like, if you had like a real blood feud like this, where there was obvious chemistry between the two guys, they obviously like working each other. The crowd obviously wanted to see it. You would just get another promotion piggybacking off it and going, we'll do it as well. So I think that kind of uniqueness to it really helps.
I think that the investment into Ring of Honor, from how they're talking about like the company on the shoot interview, is very high. I believe that Punk is like the trainer for the school at this point in time.
Right.
Joe's obviously like the world champion, and like they know that the Ring of Honor company is doing some like cool things out of it. And also in terms of where they're coming from, there isn't actually, because of how big America is, which is where I think this line differs for us in England. Joe's Cali-based. Punk is obviously from Chicago. They're both getting flown into the Northeast area. There's not really a huge amount of crossover point there that they can both like work at in like the same companies. Whereas in England, like, it's a 2-hour drive to get to pretty much all promotions, maybe 3.5 if you're going down to London. So it's way easier to replicate that through. So I think there's a mix of like the pride that they put into Ring of Honor, and then also their availability each. Because like really the only place that Punk might be working out in Cali is PWG.
That's interesting to kind of see that as well. And I think that's like, it's a really interesting point on promotions and why it's important for individuals to buy in. This is from my perspective. It's like, why you need individuals to buy in is because you do need that unique selling factor. I think it helps the workers as well, of having a place where they're like, oh, this is the place that I'm like invested in. This is the place that I'm trying to build or trying to help doing. Like, you just have that kind of old school, like, wrestlers can't trust promoters. And I don't know whether that's old school, actually. I think that's fair enough to think that. Like, what are you looking at me like that for?
This guy, I don't trust this guy. He's always, I tell you what, he's always banging on about that buy-in. I wish people would buy in. Fuck, shut up, man. Shut up. No, I think you're right though. In a modern in a modern audience or modern setting, you would see this match every show for about, and then you would kind of lose the appeal of it, the specialness of it. And I think like in terms of like modern stuff, obviously we're recording this the weekend after the Oku Osprey. It is special. It's special to kind of that place. Like it's not like you're going to every promotion up and down the country and you're seeing them two guys do it. It's like it has a bit of a feel and like a build to it, which I think can still be done. Modern, it can definitely still be done, but it is easier to just be like, well, we'll do it because promotion X did it, and then the next person does it, the next person does it.
I do think that there's an extent, though, of like these being two very high level people, and like you'd say the same about Oku and Osprey as well, in that I think there's other people that would aim to have a trilogy like this, and it wouldn't capture as well as this match does. And I think that, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this, I don't think CM Punk is a good wrestler. I do think that he's a good, like, he's got great psychology and he's a great storyteller in the ring. His wrestling lacks. I would say that he's way lower down in a pure sense of the word.
I don't see any problem with that.
His psychology is second to none. I think he gets a great, if we talk about buy-in, he gets a great buy-in from the audience. I think Joe is extremely high level, like especially this time period, he's pretty flawless in what he does. So I think that yes, the trilogy is like, it's kept special for Ring of Honor. I also think that you've got two high level wrestling minds.
I think it kind of, not that I want to, are we dipping into the match? I think that works in the match though, like, because Punk comes across very scrappy, very like, but even to the extent where he doesn't really, he kind of tries a lot of stuff. And like you were saying about the previous matches, and they reference it nicely on commentary. So you can come into this match, if anyone's not watched the previous two, you can come into this completely dry. And I think it still works. Like I really enjoyed this. He's trying to side headlocks and stuff. And it's not until he kind of gets him on the outside where he starts to really hit like a flow. And I think in terms of like what he's good at and what he's like maybe not as good as Joe at, like that kind of weighs in his favor. It's like, oh, well, also it's 100% what I would do. I'd be like, I was going to get you on the outside. I'll probably have a bit of blood on me. And then I'll get some stuff in. But I kind of quite like that scrappiness. Also, he does a springboard in this. Why has he been lying about springboards?
Why has he been lying? Why has he been lying about springboards? Oh, I didn't do a springboard until I got to WWE because nobody else was doing them. Liar. Liar.
Doesn't really.
He's a wrestler through and through. He obviously loves Hot Rod, Roddy Piper.
So we're going into this match now? Sorry, I jumped in the match.
Do you want me to talk a little bit about the interview for this? So again, on the Straight Shooting series that ROH did, they talked about this third match. They said that they had no time limit, like they'd put over that there's no time limit, but they were always aiming to go under. If anything, they wanted to go even less than this. Ricky Steamboat actually helps put together a lot of the back end of this match, because as they're getting towards the finish, they're like, what do we do? And Steamboat, who's listening across the room, comes over and is like, hey, what about this? And like one of the moments in there is Joe gets his feet up onto the ropes for a near fall, and like Steamboat suggests it, and like in the shoot interview they were both like, yep, and then he walks away and they're like, that's fucking stupid. And then they leave and come back and they're like, so that foot on the rope idea. And actually I think it's quite a nice point for Joe's character to go to those lengths. So that's a Steamboat idea in there. The intent for the match was just get the audience to believe that Punk was going to win the match, that this was going to be the change of the belt, that they were going to go free, or they were going to have the two draws and then Punk wins the belt. And then they were talking in terms of like stuff that they would have changed were all like technical bits. Punk gets blown up at some point. So he's struggling through that, and he does the drop kick on the floor and he's like, that was horrendous. What a terrible decision. And then he also mentioned about Joe kicking his shoulder out of his socket. Now, I don't see that happen at any point. I think that might be Punk elaborating a little bit and making him sound more hurt than he actually is. But yeah, overall, like the aim for this was to go under, because I think they were like, people are going to be expecting this is going to go near 60 minutes or over 60 minutes because they're saying there's no time limit. So let's fuck them and pull them all the way back into it. And Joe like specifically talks about like wanting to catch the audience off guard and make them believe things that they didn't think that they were going to believe, and give them something that was that had defied their expectations out of it in the best way possible. And I think he's very, very smart for doing that. So yeah, that's the whole ethos and drive of the match.
What a ridiculous sentence. So they were putting it together, and then Ricky Steamboat came over and was like, "Hey guys, I've got some ideas."
Yeah, but like, so Steamboat's like actively being involved with Punk, like for a couple of shows and stuff like that. They do have like a Ring of Honor run together. It's still a ridiculous thing to say.
Oh, it's great.
Like,
I love it.
He's been working with Ricky Steamboat for a couple of shows, but I suppose that's the time period that they're in, and that's like some of the availability that they have, and that's the opportunities that these guys were getting at that point to be able to work with those people, or like Punk getting to work with Raven while he was still like fresh coming out of WWE and stuff like that. All these bits are massively helpful for Punk's rise to what he does. Or like Punk getting signed shortly after this and then going to OVW where Paul Heyman's there, and he just gets to spend unlimited time with Paul Heyman in production and stuff like that. Now, other people had that opportunity. I think Punk just takes it and then just absolutely runs with it.
I think that's the thing about Punk, is his brain for it is way surpasses his actual wrestling talent and ability. And I think that's like, but that just shows you it's like there's more to it than just wrestling. Like you can be the best wrestler in the world, but if that's the only box that you tick, then you've got very much of a ceiling on you. Like, and I think if you're able to kind of wrestle and tell a story, but then you've got the psychology, but you also understand the business and the politics behind it, you can also see the opportunities that you've got, and then you improve. Because I think one thing I would say about Punk is that if we go from the IWA Mid-South triple threat that we watched last time to this, he looks like a completely different guy. Like there's definitely a bit more of a swagger. There's definitely a bit more of like there's more of a rounded performer to this. I still think like the stuff he does in the ring is pretty basic, like in terms of, but I like the delivery of it. There's one bit where he does like a top rope crossbody, and it's like he slips, and I think he legit slips, but I liked it because it looks like the way that they're setting him up here is like he is the underdog, obviously, and he's the guy who is gunning for the belt, and it looks like, I think you do feel like he's going to win it when you're watching it, because it just feels like Joe is like an unsurmountable task for him. But in everything that he does, there's a real believability to it in the delivery of it, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'd also say that, like, again, I mentioned about the Hot Rod similarities. You can tell that, like, Roddy Piper is, like, CM Punk's guy. Like, you can feel that coming off of them. Like, you can feel, like, the essence of what Piper is, and you can put it into Punk. And I think you still see that today in terms of if you look at Piper in, like, late 90s in WCW, actually there's quite a lot of that coming through Punk at the moment, not in a bad way, in a way of being like, I've transcended this company and you need me more than I need you.
Do you think his gimmick at this point, if we look at Punk's gimmick, was his gimmick like trying to be a shoot legit fighter? Like, is that what the shorts are? Is that what the kind of like the whole, I know, like, was he straight edge at this point? I think he's always been straight edge, isn't he? Like, always. So
if he's a now, he never was, is the quote.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so Punk's always straight edge. I think Punk's character is that he is CM Punk through this. I don't think he's trying to be like a fighter or anything like that. I think he's just being CM Punk. So the shorts are just shorts that you would have worn, and you can see that evolution from like the IWA Mid-South stuff where they are just basketball shorts, and now they're the branded shorts. He also wears different gear each match. Like he's got a different set of shorts on each match.
Oh,
and
really?
I wish I made a note of this, that I wish that I'd have said he's going to bleed because he's wearing white. Because if you wear white, it means red, which means green. So he wears different gear throughout it all. I just think this is CM Punk being CM Punk. And I think like CM Punk is cool. And I think at this time period, especially wrestling cool, at this time period, he's the coolest motherfucker going. But in saying that, I think people can struggle to match Punk's coolness, but Joe does it. Joe comes out and he looks like a star. You just believe he's on the fucking roll of his life.
So I think Samoa Joe definitely looks like. I think the thing about Samoa Joe was as well, like his build was always the thing that was like different and set him apart. But it married into the style of like, this guy's fucking. He's like built like a rock, and he's gonna fucking like roll over you. His music's class as well. It hasn't gone to the full like what it then becomes now, but I didn't realize that it's basically the same thing, just like a little bit more impactful now. It still uses the same song and the same samples at the start, and it's fucking it's so good. Like, and I think it obviously TNA just went, because that's where my first introduction to Samoa Joe was TNA, and I was like, Samoa Joe. I was like, what the fuck is this? This guy comes out and he looks a bit kind of like he's built like a barrel, and you're like, I don't know what this is going to be. And then within minutes of actually seeing him walk to the ring, you're like, oh, he's legit fucking tough. Like he's legit going to kick your fucking head in.
Also, Punk was a little emo entrance.
Yeah.
That's your soundbite. They advertise the podcast.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it one bit.
What?
I didn't like his emo entrance at all.
I like
what? Mate, why do you not like that? It's amazing. Oh,
Did like that. I like the crowd, like doing the
steps out. He's got the guys behind him.
Yeah,
that's sick. Why do you not like that?
I don't know. You know what? I think
you don't like emos. That's your problem.
I fucking love emos. I was an emo. I wasn't like a gothy emo though. I was like.
Did you not like it when he brought it back at AEW as well?
I thought it was okay. Like I don't know.
What?
I don't know. It just wasn't my full, like, there's something about it. I don't know whether it was just too close to like 2004 me of looking back. It's like, because I think you're right. It's like in 2004, this was cool as fuck. Like the jacket was cool. The hair was cool. The shorts were cool. But then I'm looking at it going like, yeah, but that's what I fucking wanted to wear. And that's not cool.
It's so you're so unusual. It's cool.
I would say it's cool.
Yeah, when you did the AEW as well, it was cool as fuck.
Yeah.
Because everyone was like, oh shit. Oh, he's using that music. And then he came out and he had the shorts on. Everyone was like, oh fuck. Oh, it's that version of Punk.
I don't know whether it was just this CM Punk I was not into. Like, I was not into CM Punk in the early 2000s at all. I think it was, weirdly enough, it was WWE CM Punk that I was like, oh, okay, cool, fine. But that's what brought me back to watching loads of wrestling was obviously the pipe bomb. Like, and I think a lot of people call that as like people who kind of lapsed for a little bit. That was one of the things that brought them back in. And the match against John Cena and stuff like that, it was like, that's what brought me back to wrestling and went, oh, okay, this guy's interesting. But at the time, 2004, 2007, 2008, I was like full TNA mark, like 100%. And so for me, I was just like, nah. I was like a Samoa Joe guy. I was probably like, I was a Christian guy, Kurt Angle guy. Like I liked Tomko. I didn't like Tomko.
Christian Tomko.
Matt Morgan. No, I didn't like Matt Morgan. But like, you know, when you're watching it at the time, I'm going like, okay, I'm into this. And I think, CM Punk just never really resonated for me. So it was a question that I kind of like had was like, although I do agree now, and you know, from 2011 onwards, basically, I was like, what's the kind of X factor with Punk? What's the je ne sais quoi? Because like you look at him
That's
here,
the question. That's the question.
If you put all the different component parts and laid them out, I'm like, oh, nah.
Je ne sais quoi. We're not talking about Rene Dupree. What are we doing? I don't know. It's, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, this is the question of like what makes someone get over? What is that X factor that hits and lands with them? And I think there's something that's built into them, and I think there's something that's built into Punk where you'd strap this on 9 out of 10 other people and it wouldn't work, and it hasn't worked because the amount of people that have tried to replicate this, it just doesn't sit the same. And
I was about to say that.
Reason,
yeah. Do you think it's like do you think it is that it's the old JR thing of like the version you're seeing of him in the ring is him turned up to like 11, which is kind of what he said about like Steve Austin. It's him just cranked up. So like I think it is just like there's an authenticity, but then it's like it's obviously expanded for a product that's got cameras pointed at you and stuff like that. I think maybe that's it. Is like people resonate with that. Same with Piper. You kind of had this feeling that he was just being authentic.
Yeah.
Wasn't really playing a guy. He was just being himself, but just cranking it up.
I think it's the hardest thing to find in a wrestler. So it's that thing that we talk about with like, and all three of us are very invested in storytelling and character building and things like that. I think it's like, and we've done it with a couple of people recently where we've really worked with them for like years at trying to go like, hey, do this character. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And then you go around the houses and you have to go through that process of kind of like throwing things against the wall and seeing what part of you sticks. But then ultimately it always comes back round. Well, yeah, it ultimately always comes back round to what is like, do you have the balls to just be vulnerable enough to say, this is who I am, and I don't give a fuck whether you like it or not? And I think going back to what you're saying, Liam, about like this has been stuck and copied and pasted and put onto other wrestlers, like especially the gear. You see it nowadays, like people walking around in this gear like 20 years later. And I'm like, why would you do that? Because Punk's done it. Therefore, it's almost like walking in with a yellow bandana on, like, and going, "Hey, brother, I'm fine." Like you can't do it, or like, you know what I mean.
I think this brings us to I sort of call it like a bit of a bell curve, or like a sort of like upward scale of like people getting over and stuff like that. This goes with everything, and this goes with like just being social people and what makes like a person like captivating and stuff like that. But like overall, it's very much this case of, as you get higher and higher and higher up, it becomes this more and more intangible thing of like, why is this getting over and why is that getting over, and like, why does this happen like this, and like that then simmers down into it. And the vast majority of people sit in this scale here where like they can get over to an extent, but they're not like superstar over. But for someone to become a superstar, I think it becomes this thing that you can't teach, that everything that they do just becomes gold. And it's like, cool. And sometimes you get environments where that breeds other people, or there's people in and around it that then you go, what a time period this is. But if that isn't there, then they move on pretty quickly out of it. And you can look at it throughout like the history of wrestling. Like, so even if you look at it of like the 80s, and then when like you get Hogan and Warrior coming through and like that sort of like pipes in together, then you look at like the late 90s and you get Rock and Austin, and then everybody else that gets cool based off of them. But like they're running the charge. I think this ROH period is a bit untouchable. I think like TNA at the time period that we're talking about like is another great example out of that, where if people have the thing that gets them over, it then becomes, well, how do you replicate
it's that X factor, isn't it? And I think I think it's like, if people we work with, it's like Leon Slater has that, where it's like it's really difficult. But I've said this to Leon recently, is like, aside from the fact that he just has this kind of like raw talent and this just like ability that is way ahead of anybody else's, he also has this mind that wants to get better and better and better, watches his stuff and gets better and better and better, looks at his promos and go, I want to be the best promo guy. How do I become the best promo guy? Let me watch a load of promos and take all that in. So it's like, and I think Punk and Joe are probably the same from the interviews that I haven't watched recently, but the interviews that I've seen of Punk and Joe in the past, it's like their shoot interviews are fucking great because they sit there and they dissect and they go right into the detail. They tell you why they're doing certain things, and like the actual underbelly of it all is this like, there's so much influence, there's so much like reason, there's so much direction that they're trying to go in, and then you just the match itself is just this like peak of the iceberg stuff that you see, so all of it gets thrown into it, and then they just have this ability. It's the X factor is never just one little thing that you've got. It has to be a multitude of things that get focused into the right delivery, I guess. And these types of guys are this, like, yeah, I think Punk is the one where it's like I don't think I've ever really been a massive fan of him in this period, but there's absolutely no doubt that you want to watch what he does and you want to see the stories that he's trying to tell.
So he does love the emos.
Who, me?
Aye.
Yeah, I do, yeah. I don't know. There's just something with Punk that, like, I don't know. Maybe I just love, if you look at, like, say, Eddie Guerrero, right? So if we're talking about, like, icons of wrestling, Eddie Guerrero, for me, I think is definitely up there in terms of probably my personal favorite wrestler. Punk isn't anywhere near that for me. Like, and like, you put the two together, they're both brilliant and they're both incredibly watchable. But in terms of what resonates and sits for me, Punk should be the thing. Like, for especially 2004 me, bleach blonde hair and like emo stuff. I'm like, that's basically what, like, I wanted to look like Chino Moreno from Deftones. You know what I mean? It's like, this is it. This is the fucking thing. And then you go to like, but my favorite wrestler was Eddie Guerrero. So it's like, I think with wrestling, sometimes it's like, I don't know, if it's too close to you, it goes back to the wrestling cool thing, where it's like, well, if I saw that guy on Hippie Green in Newcastle, CM Punk, I'd think, well, is he hanging around with those 17-year-old girls? I've seen guys like that. And there was a guy actually who used to walk around in my high school who looked like CM Punk before we all knew what CM Punk was. So you're like, I don't know. I'm like, there's a part of CM Punk which I'm like, yeah, he could have grown up in Monk Seaton. I just find it difficult to like find cool. I don't know.
I think there's a big part of Punk that he talks about in the shoot interview as well, is like he's very, very polarizing, and you see that now that very few people are like, it doesn't affect. They're either like, yeah, I fucking love him, or like, I fucking hate him. He goes either way out of that, and there's just something about that he then gravitates towards and then takes more of. To get into the match, something that I really liked about the match was Samoa Joe's selling. I think his selling in this match is excellent. Mm-hmm. I think that he looks like a champion that's been through the ringer, and that this is his last outing before like he's going to drop the belt to Punk. Like, he gets dropped on stuff and his legs go, and you just go, oh shit, this is the moment. And I think that work from Samoa Joe in this is excellent.
I think so too. I think it becomes really apparent towards the end of the match as well. So like, there's a part in the end of the match, I'm probably taking a step back away from Joe, but the Steamboat keeping the bell from ringing spot, so the sleeper hold. But that whole point, it's like the infinite sleeper spot where he basically has a sleeper in for like 5 minutes, and then he tries to break it. I thought it was fucking great. Like, I loved it. Like, I think like a lot of the match I was kind of in and out of. I remember saying this to you guys at the start or whilst I was watching. I was like, I wasn't massively like, it didn't have me enthralled to start off with. It kind of like, I just found it difficult. There's bits that I quite liked, and then I was like coming back out of it. I was like, oh, okay. But at this point where they do the sleeper hold, and then they do the 3 arms and Steamboat, I'm not sure on the delivery of it, like, but I was able to look past the delivery and get the concept of it, where Steamboat and the comms sold it really well by going, hey, he saw his fingers wiggling, or whatever it was. His fingers are still moving. And I was like, okay, I think if I was in the crowd though, I'd be like, what the fuck's going on? But like,
what?
Yeah. You'd be like, well, that was 3. He dropped his hand 3 times. So, but then what then rolls into that? I think both of those guys show what they're brilliant at this stage. So Joe just looks like he's going to fucking rip his head off and going to snap his neck, and that sleeper's just great. And all the variations of him trying to keep the sleeper on, it's brilliant. I think this is what Punk's great at, and it's the storytelling side of it, where Punk's trying to get out of it. Punk selling is something that kind of sometimes sits with me, not great, and like his movement and things like that. But Joe, the way Joe just ragdolls him around is just like, I fucking love it. What did you guys think of that section?
Yeah, I quite like the I think what I love about the sleeper is like it's so protected's a bad name, but it's like synonymous that when it goes on, you feel like an instant reaction from the crowd because they start going like, "This is it. This is it. This could be the end." And that whole bit they do is great because you expect like, oh, he's going to hit him with a jawbreaker and get out of it. He jawbreakers, and it's another thing where like it staggers Joe. Fuck, he's back in the sleeper. And then like he jawbreakers and staggers him again. And there's a bit even towards the finish as well. We got the well, my dogs agree.
I would say as well for this, I think there's a nice sort of like mirroring of the sleeper to the headlocks that Punk used pretty much throughout the trilogy, but especially in the first match. He's using this headlock to wear down Joe and to stop him striking and to stop him moving, which is then quite poetic that the back end of this is Joe with a sleeper position, which is in essence the same thing but turned up a lot.
I think if they're talking about like how they wanted to surprise the crowd, and if they wanted to go like, you just didn't know what was coming, especially I think it was around about like the 22-minute mark or something like that when this starts to come in. If you're trying to kind of take the crowd a different route to where they expect this to go, I think this was a great way of doing that. Like I thought it was a really clever way of bringing them straight back in.
Kind of really like the fact too that Steamboat's involved, but he's not stereotypically involved. He's not like he's not, interrupting a ref or like, taking a belt off someone. Like he's there, but he's not like limelight stealing or like kind of reaction stealing. He's just there to shift that story on a tiny little bit more. I really like that. And also when he's there, he's just watching. If you watch Steamboat, he's just like, oh, this is fucking great.
That was so that was one of my notes, which is going right at the back at the start of the match, was like, because I was a bit like, Steamboat came out and I was like, did they need to bring Steamboat into this? I know Steamboat was in Ring of Honor at this point, but it did, I was like, because they'd done Les Thatcher in the first couple of ones as well. So they were obviously trying to put a bit of gravitas by bringing some like legends in, like, oh, even the old legends are interested in this. But I thought Steamboat sold the match quite well on the intro, even though I thought that might have been a bit superfluous. Like, at the time I was like, do you need Steamboat to fucking sell this? The match just sold itself. What was good was like, he just goes, I'm just going to be a fan at ringside. And it sets up then that bit where, I totally agree with you. It's an interference without it really being an interference, without it being like a chair shot or a ref bump or a whatever, or like pulling the legs away. I like that. I thought it was a really interesting way of like keeping it in the ring. Like even he wants to be behind the barriers. He's just interested in the match continuing to go. So yeah, I thought that was cool, especially when that then leads into like the infinite sleeper kind of loop where he just couldn't break out of it. You could see you could feel the tension building at that point. And I think this is the point where people are like, ooh, what the fuck's going to happen here? What's happening now? I've no idea.
It also feels very true to Steamboat.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like something that Ricky Steamboat would do. Like, it doesn't just feel like, oh, he's here, and then it becomes this, like, again, he plays the part of Ricky Steamboat extremely well, and like everything that happens in the match, everything that Punk does, everything that Joe does, like, they're all there for it. Also, like, as a special shout to Todd Sinclair, like, he refs all three of these matches, and he's extremely crucial for all of these. Like, he's also extremely pivotal within this trilogy.
Is this so? One question I had, because I can't quite remember, but is the kind of fast count, is that a Ring of Honor style stuff from this time, or because I liked it, like I really liked the way that he was like 1, 2, fucking kick out was like real quick, and he does that from the get go. I didn't know whether that was just him or a Ring of Honor thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a Ring of Honor thing. Like they don't massively like go too long out of the counts. Like it is quite a fast paced style of reffing out of stuff. I tend to find.
I quite liked it.
That might vary from person to person, but Todd Sinclair's like a long standing referee within Ring of Honor, and that's his style. That's what it kind of feels like.
Especially when it goes to like the finish, and it's just like it's the sleeper. And he gets right in there and he's like, oh, fuck, he's out. Like he's dead. He's dead. Done. That's it. And I think that's a really nice way of it. Like, I think the way that they did that finish was fucking great. Like, I really enjoyed it. And I don't think you don't really see that happening an awful lot. Like, I think
something that Ring of Honor is very, very good for is having finishes that just sort of feel like they've happened. They're always built to. They're always really well built to, but the finishes just feel unique.
Yeah.
Like across the board, you go, oh, that's interesting. And it makes the matches therefore more interesting, because it's not like, oh, and then there's the near falls and then there's the big one. It's like, oh, and then this match has just ended. Interesting. Like, this is off topic, but I watched a Colt Cabana, Bryan Danielson match, and like he just catches this finish out of nowhere in like 7 minutes, and it's just like it's a flash pin, 1, 2, 3, and Cabana's fuming about it, and it's just a really nice, interesting finish that, like, again, Ring of Honor do really, really well, especially this time period of it.
It lends a bit of legitimacy to it as well. And I know that this is still like quite early days for Ring of Honor. I think they started in 2002. Was it 2001? So they're still like, yeah, so it's still early days. And one of I remember reading some of the the Observer reports around Ring of Honor was like, everyone was saying, oh, they're doing everything right. They're avoiding all of the kind of tropes of like a failing wrestling company. They're not going this way. Like, they're building a wrestling company for wrestling fans. And you could argue that was like the reason why Ring of Honor never really quite like got to, out of like fourth or even third biggest in the country. It was never close to like TNA or certainly not WWE at that point. But what it really did fucking well was like these were wrestling matches, and like it presented wrestling in that pure style of wrestling without it being fucking boring. Like, without it just being 60-minute matches all the fucking time, without it just being a load of kicks. Or like a load of like technical wrestling, like catch, whatever the fuck you want to call it, like that type of like it brought in.
Feeling very cold out here, by the way.
No, well, look, this is the point. Is like, I think this is what you do really well. Is it adds the emotion.
Oh, here he goes. Here's the charm.
You add the emotional side of it to it as well, because I think a lot of that pure wrestling, and there are wrestlers out there who do similar style to you, who then forget that the whole fucking point is, one, it's entertainment, and two, you've got to be garnering some sort of a reaction from people, an emotional reaction from people, and telling stories is the whole fucking game that we're in. So I think Ring of Honor do that really well in this time period. They also do a lot of shit that I'm like, well, fuck this. This is like not like, but that's how they get these fans on board for them to allow them to do these type of like matches, is because they're staying true to what they say. They're not like pulling the wool over their eyes. It's pure wrestling, but as wrestling should be, if that makes sense.
I think this brings up a debate of what does Ring of Honor want to be, and then in process, what does everybody want out of wrestling? I don't think Ring of Honor ever wants to be the main company in the world. No. They want to be the company that is, especially this time period, the company that is remembered for having the best wrestling going. And I think that they absolutely nail, and people look back on and they go, yeah, this is the time period. I think you can say the same thing with ECW. I don't think ECW is particularly wanting to be the company in America. They want to be the company that is being remembered. I think you'd say the same for the X Division in TNA as well.
They definitely want to be the cool company, like the cool wrestling company. And I think that's fucking, it is. I mean, like from a promoter's point of view, they hit loads of financial issues as they went on. And that like quite well documented, like the Kerry Silken stuff before that. I think it wasn't Kerry Silken at this point, was it? It was Peter Rob Feinstein, when it fucking Catch a Predator, RF video kind of stuff. And I think from a real pure, like, financial point of view, it's like a very difficult model to like make worthwhile. Oh, there's New. Hello, New. Newt's a big Ring of Honor fan.
Newt likes his wrestling pure. He likes a bit of proper wrestling. Likes the wrestles. I think with the ECW thing, it was very much like they were trying to be the counter. It's counter programming, isn't it? They're trying to be the counter program, and I think that's maybe why. Like, I've not watched as much Ring of Honor as I probably should have, because it is the wrestling.
I fucking love it.
Yeah,
he
of
loves
course.
it. Liam loves it. He's like, oh, I fucking. He keeps referencing. He's like, oh, there's this thing in Ring of Honor. I'm like, fuck off, mate. Fuck off. Is it Sabu? Is it Sabu? I'm not interested.
I want to see Dustin Rhodes as Black Rain.
But I think now when I watch it, though, I do quite enjoy it. But I think if this was the only thing I was digesting, it wouldn't have been for me. It wouldn't have had the hook for me. But now to watch like isolated matches and watch like these bits of like programming or like specific runs, I'm like, oh yeah, that's fucking really good. That's really, but I have that thing with some of this stuff on modern products, like some of the stuff on an AEW, where I'm like at that Continental Classic, I was like, this is fucking great. And it was just well booked wrestling matches, and occasionally there was like smallsy brawly stuff in there, but I was like, oh, this is fucking brilliant. And then I'm like, maybe I do like the wrestling. Maybe Liam's won, and I do actually enjoy the wrestling he wrestles. But it's when it has, like you say, Bars, like it's when it has a reason, or it has a meaning, or I have some type of emotional investment where I'm like, oh shit, this guy's actually in peril. They're not just doing stuff just for the crack.
I think that's what puts me off about like the 2-hour-long time limit draws. I'm just like, is it just a wankathon? And it sounds like, no, it's not. Like, it sounds
the
like
first one especially is excellent. I will say that, like, it comes off really well. I think, like, just to touch on that point as well, of like, say, like the Continental Classic and other bits like this, and this trio is like, or the trilogy, sorry. When you catch stuff in isolation, you can go, yeah, this is great. And I think the same thing can be said for films and for music as well. We look back over the time, we go, wow, what an album that was, or what a time period that was for like great music coming out. But then you also don't consider all the stuff that's also coming out that just doesn't hit the same. So then if you look at, say, this All-Star Extravaganza, I don't think anybody's going to look back at Jay Lethal versus the Weapon of Mass Destruction, Flash Flanagan, and be like, wow, what a match that was. Or if anybody's going to look at the pure title match of John Walters against Jimmy Rave, where it ends in a count out after 15, 16 minutes, I don't think people are going to look at that in the same light that they look at Punk and Joe.
I do love Jay Lethal, though.
I do like a bit of Jay Lethal, especially like his TNA run and the X Division stuff. But again, I think when we can look back on it in hindsight, and I think this is a problem that we run into with modern stuff, is that we're like, why isn't this good? And it's like, actually, there are some bits that are good. It's just that we're in the modern time period and we miss that. And it's the same thing for music, and it's the same thing for films.
Yeah. And I think it's all contextual as well, isn't it? So it's like, again, like you can look back at this and go, I mean, Austin Aries is obviously a bell end, but Austin Aries versus Low Key, time limit draw, 20 minutes on here. In 2004, was everyone going, oh, that was fucking brilliant. I love Austin Aries or Low Key. Or were they just very much sitting in the mid card, establishing themselves?
No, they're up. So basically, this is to build Austin Aries to sort of finish this out a little bit. Joe loses the match he loses the title at the next show. So final
fucking
battle.
Spoilers, Liam.
Sorry. 2004 final battle. Austin Aries beats Samoa Joe in 17 minutes.
Oh, okay.
That it's also gets a 4.25 star from Dave Meltzer.
Oh, see, this is the thing. All of these are getting rated by Dave Meltzer, which means that it must have been the hipstery promotion of the time.
Said by the hipster promoter of the time.
Yeah.
I guess as well, to sort of round out in terms of other bits that I've got, Final Battle in terms of audience draw is like about 700, which is pretty much the same. Or it's 800 for this final match. The third anniversary, which is where they go back to Dayton, the first show that happens, the World Title Classic, draws about 500. The third anniversary celebration, night 2, draws 700. Punk's final show is probably the biggest draw that they get in this era, or at least the final chapter where he goes off and then gets signed to WWE properly and leaves, is 1,200. So like Punk's absolutely a draw, and they're saying goodbye to Punk. It sits in and around this point, but you can start to see like the extra 100, 200 people coming into the buildings as like this time period goes through. They do a successful job of running in Dayton the first time, and then the second time that they go back, they've got 200 extra people, which is ideal, right?
Mm.
Yeah, where do they like? Where does like Ring of Honor peak out in terms of that big draw on attendance? Like what year does that happen in?
I think that actually it stays in and around this number pretty much throughout its livelihood. It probably goes higher as you get to the HD net era that they go into, where they start getting onto TV. I actually think the quality of wrestling dips at that point because they are doing TV, but there's at least more people in there. I wonder if I can pull something up.
Do you think it dips as well because of like the breadth of the roster at the time? Do you think more of the guys they built up have moved on, or is it just
yes, this isn't the same. I think PWG get it worse, but ROH definitely gets hit with this, where like they get Punk taken, and then there's like another crop of people that go through, and then Danielson gets taken, and then like Adam Cole, and then at that point like the indies are really like getting starved out. So where you might have like you have 3 or 4 years of like Danielson after Punk, then it's only like 2 years, and then like Adam Cole's meant to be the guy, and then he gets, and then it becomes this fucking cycle that they don't. Once it gets past Adam Cole, I don't think they ever really recover from, and I would say that PWG probably sits the same out of that.
So you look at like 2010 Ring of Honor on HDNet, they were drawing about 300. Which is what we fucking draw, which is mad when you think about it in those terms. But like, you know, they're bigger shows, so they do the Manhattan Center and do Final Battle, and that'll get 1,200, 1,300 people in. Yeah. But that period of time, in terms of like who their draws was Generico and Steen. Yeah, Roddy and Davey Richards.
The Generico and Steen are the two that were the next in after the Danielson take.
Yeah. All right. So it went from Punk and Joe through to Danielson and like McGuinness. Because that's another one that I look at and go like, ooh, I've dipped in and out of the Danielson McGuinness stuff, and like some of the matches are a bit like, whoa, fucking hell, like this is a bit.
I fucking love them.
Yeah.
If there's any wrestling that's me, it's Danielson and McGuinness.
Yeah. But the one thing that they do great at is they actually make it mean fucking something. I think that's the whole point. Is like there's a real heated rivalry in there, and I think it's really that's the bit I love about delving back into these types of things. It's like it's a real snapshot of time as well. It's like a chronicle of the time as well. And you look back at like 2009 America, and you've got fucking spiky haired Nigel McGuinness against Bryan Danielson, and it's just like it is quite
Liam will be down at Wembley, and if he doesn't get Danielson McGuinness, he'll fucking riot. He'll riot.
Kick off, truly.
Yeah. So I think Ring of Honor is a strange one, isn't it? Because then like your 2013 after that, so like you kind of like 10 years after this happened, it's a bit of a strange company. I always put like Rhett Titus as the kind of like he's like the that's where they kind of go with that kind of thing, where it's like the mid card is just full of people who are just kind of, and they lose that, like they don't have your Punks, your Danielsons, your Steen and Genericos, your McGuinness, like that top tier of like the guys who really have the ability to tell stories through wrestling and through the real purest form of wrestling. And that, like, when you get that heady mix of it, it is fucking brilliant. And I think they lose that for quite some time after that. But that's when WWE went into full Hoover mode and just took fucking everybody. Anyone who had any
you look at
semblance.
NXT and you go, oh, NXT is the product that, because then they've got everybody. So then, of course, the card's great because they've literally got everybody that's been on the indies doing this shit throughout it.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, this is a PWG card, just with loads better production out of it.
Loads better production and probably agented a lot more heavy for it to become more digestible. Like a
TV product,
people actually, and there's something to be said about that being better, because there are some times where you watch some of the indie stuff and go like, well, that's quite baggy.
I'm kind of with Liam's facial expression here. Like I think I would much rather watch a Ring of Honor style Ciampa versus fucking Gargano than an NXT one. And maybe. I don't know why. I don't know if the production takes me out of it. Using Ring of Honor was a bad example, like a PWG. I don't know if maybe the production takes me out of it, or maybe because it's so produced, it's missing a little bit of that fucking raw. I fucking love indie wrestling.
I do agree with you.
I love wrestling, and I love grimy fucking bingo halls. That's what
I do agree with that side of it, and I think we run out of a fucking brewery, so it's like that side of stuff is like it adds the extra bit to me, like the punk, like kind of like fucking gritty side of it. I will say Black and Gold NXT was so fucking good though. Like it was just so easy to digest. I think that was the other side of it as well. Like from a story perspective, I think it's dead and so that's where I was trying to approach it from. Is like if I go and watch like say the Gargano versus Ciampa stuff, it's like it was way easier. I don't mean that went on too long, but it was way easier to delve into that and go, right, what is the story that you're telling here? Like, right, where's the first beat? Bang, bang, bang. And then you can follow the lineage of that story, like really easily. Whereas I find now there is something, it's almost like a crate digging hipster vinyl collector where like the indie stuff is like you have to really seek it out. And then you go and watch the shoot interviews, and then you go and read articles about it. And then you go and read about it on Reddit, and you go, and you start to piece it together yourself. Now there's something wonderful about that, because then you make your own lore around it, and it's almost like the storyline attaches to you a little bit heavier, because you're like, well, this is my take on the storyline, this is my take on how this went. Like there's a lot left to the imagination, which if I look at my taste, I also really love that. That's probably me just getting older and busier and not having enough time to do that, I think, is what I used to do that all the time. But yeah, so I think that's the differences that you of the kind of ends of the spectrum.
That NXT show though, that Black and Gold era NXT is it's super digestible.
Yeah,
it is. The show opens, there is a wrestling match. There's something.
Good. It's a good wrestling match.
Yeah, and it's a real I remember starting to watch that and going like, oh, this is really easy. Yeah. And I kind of had that a little bit with some other promotions where like with AEW where I was like, oh, this is great. The
Collision was like that for me.
When it first started.
The presentation of Collision for me has been like, I think it's brilliant because it's like, good wrestling, good wrestlers. The storylines are laid out quite easily. There's a storyline within the show. There's wider storylines. Yeah.
Maybe I do like wrestling.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Tell you what I do like. Fucking concession stand brawls. That's what I fucking like. Anyway, we're going off topic here. Yeah. I've done it again. I feel like you two guys steer the ship, and I'm like just an unruly little animal that's on there.
Fucking wild card.
Spoken stuff. Oh, is this the mast? And I'm just like, wee.
How are we rating this match?
Oh shit! Have we got a rating system?
We sort of had like thumbs up, middle. No, we had the bare ass gimmick, didn't we?
Which now that we have to go back to Between Two Wrestlers rather than the previous redacted name, it fits better, bare ass.
So I'm going to go first, right? Because I reckon I'm going to be higher than Burrs on this. I really, really enjoyed this. So what's the best? What's that? Is that?
Bare balls, wasn't it? Bare ass is bottom. Yeah. Bare gooch is middle. Bare balls is top.
Bare balls, man. Full, two big bare balls for me.
So for me, I would put it like I'm like the back of the balls, like right at the back of the balls. Whereas I think there was bits of it that I was like, I think there might have been that's more that's on me more than the actual match itself.
Like you're breaking up with them.
Sorry, guys. It's more me who's the issue here. But I tell you what it was, though. It was like, it really came to the back end of it is when and this always happens because my attention span's so shit, is when I get to the crux of it, I was like, oh, I kind of want to go back and watch all 3 matches now. Do you know what I mean? I was like, oh, that was really interesting, like how they ended that, and I really like that. And I kind of wish it felt like there was bits that I didn't quite get, or there was references being thrown out that I was like, I've not seen this. Like, I'm watching episode 3. I should have watched fucking episode 1 and 2 first before I saw this.
So bollocks.
I'm going to be...
No, you're not bollocks, you're arse.
I'm like, the pocket just behind your balls.
You're on the gooch, but you're getting close to the balls.
Yeah.
Which is a good spot, if we're being honest.
Good spot.
I'm terrible for like making decisions on this. And I feel like I'm going to say bare balls. Maybe just one ball. This isn't all balls. Just one bare ball.
Oh, why have I been so generous?
Should we just fucking...
I'll tell you why I've been so generous. Because I think deep down, I'm a massive...
Sorry, I've just been describing that, and Ella has just opened the door and just looked at me with disgust about what we're talking about.
Maybe we should think of... Maybe this is how Dave Meltzer got to his 4.25 star rating system. He was like...
Got ridiculed by his partner until he went, just go with stars.
She said, why are you talking about wispy pubes on the back of a ball bag?
Come
on, Dave.
I think... Because when I watched these 2 guys at Wembley, I was glued.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think I really do quite like both these guys. So I think that's maybe why I'm a little bit generous. But also anytime I watch like a full wrestle and I have a good time, I'm a bit like, oh.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's quite a good way of kind of rating it, though, because it's like, it probably is outside of where you normally sit with it. I think there's something that just doesn't quite sit right with CM Punk at this stage for me, which I was quite surprised about, because the comeback of CM Punk, I loved, and I think like from 2011 onwards, and I just assumed that I really liked CM Punk. Like, and watching the 2 matches that we've seen of him from like early on in his career, I've been like, not that.
One of the reasons why this isn't 2 balls for me and it's just 1 is I do think there's a lack in CM Punk's wrestling ability, which for me personally, I need a little bit more out of, especially for the time period that we're in, and especially for the product that ROH is delivering. There are, and as they say in the shoot interview, there's technical stuff that should have been tighter and crisper. And I would agree with that, which is why I can't give it my full bare balls rating.
I think that's right. I think there's one set, like there's one headlock in where Punk, I'm like, you need to, come on, fucking straighten your back a little bit. Like, get fucking into it. Like, you just look like you're kind of like giving him a hug. But yeah, I think it was good. It was an interesting watch though. And I think it's nice to think about where we're going to go next.
What match are we going to watch between 2 wrestlers?
Right in the gooch.
The thing is, though, we've done a triple threat, which wasn't between 2 wrestlers. Is the goal now that we get between 2 wrestlers?
I think the format's up for discussion, isn't it? Really. So, like, I think
I need rules, Andrew. You know this about me. I need rules so I can choose what I'm going to ignore.
Yeah, I think. Do we go from one wrestler to the other wrestler? I think that might be quite interesting. The only problem is if we do a series on one wrestler, it could get quite boring. Like, I think it could be quite dull. I think there's something good about shifting from like different settings to different settings. I don't know.
Maybe there's an argument for watching 3 matches of one wrestler at several different points throughout the career of like early, middle, end, or whatever we want to look at. And then from there we go to the next one and like whatever way that we choose to go through that. That might be the way that we look at doing it.
I think that's...
Yeah. I think we do something weird where we say to people, give us wrestler plus time period plus company. And then we pick 2 random ones and we figure out how we get between those 2 wrestlers.
Yeah, that can be part of it. Yes.
Which could fucking backfire because someone's going to give us something obscure. They're going to go get from Lex Luger to Liam Slater 3CW 2000 and something.
Oh,
So
like the 6 degrees separation.
You want to go like the Kevin Bacon gimmick, right? Of like,
yeah, that's the idea. Is we get from there to there.
Oh, what we do is 6 degrees of separation type thing. So you've got 6. Yeah. Like, how can you get from two wrestlers?
How we get between two wrestlers. Oh, I'm in.
Guys, that's just what I fucking said.
No, you're saying differently, and then we got that.
This is the whole point of wrestling, though. Is like one person can wrestle the same match in the same way, and another person does it, and it's like, shit, fuck yes, I like that.
Oh, so what you're saying there is, whatever I do, you prefer it when Liam does it.
This has been between two wrestlers.
I think we got it. I think we got there. I think we know what we're doing.
Okay, cool. Well, that was good. See you later.
Bye.
No. Bye. What are you doing? So anyway, upcoming North shows. Go to northwrestling.co.uk. On socials, we are
North Wrestling NCL on Instagram, Facebook, on Twitter, we're North_NCL.
Yeah, you can also do you subscribe to Patreon? You subscribe to Patreon. You can support us on Patreon. You can also get access to the entire back catalogue on YouTube. And we've just dropped a bunch of really sick merch, including some really awesome long sleeves. And we've still got some coffee left. But for all that stuff, you can just go to northwrestling.co.uk.
The coffee's going to go out of date, so go and fucking buy it before it does.
I'll take it off your hands.
Yeah, you will do. That's what's going to happen. You've already done quite a few of it, so it's fine. There you go. Well, thank you very much. That was fun, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.